So today's topic is going to be taking a step back from yourself. I want to talk about this topic because recently we had an alumni speaker, and one of the things he mentioned was that there seems to be a lack of empathy as a skill outside in the real world, as a desired skill, I mean. And so it got me thinking, okay, well, then how do people increase their level of empathy? How do people work on that? Because, it's not something, it's not a skill that you can just learn, right? It's not like coding, or it's not like learning to play the piano. How do you practice empathy? And the solution I've come up with is to become better at empathizing with another person. You first have to empathize or learn how to empathize with yourself. At first, it doesn't seem intuitive, right? Why would empathizing with yourself lead to you being having greater empathy with other people? Or in another way to look at it, what even is the act of empathizing with yourself? So let's talk about it. First, we have to define what the act of empathy is. The ability of empathy to me is the ability to share the thoughts and feelings of another, specifically about a certain experience that they had. However, without the knowledge of exactly what that other person was thinking or exactly what that other person was feeling at that exact moment in time, there's no way for us to measure how good we are at empathizing with another person, right? Unless we straight up go up to them and say, hey, I think this is what you were thinking and feeling, am I correct? Which is kind of a weird conversation to have. Then I got on to thinking, what then do we have? What is available to us? And the answer to that question was, well, everything that's ours, right? Our own thoughts, our own feelings, and our own experiences are all available to us. So what could we do with that? What I propose is that you could empathize with yourself given what you have. So, given your thoughts, given your feelings, given your experiences, you could reflect back on them and think about how they may have affected who you are today, right? How may have these factors impacted your identity or your thoughts, your opinions? For example, and this is a really simple example, like way simplified. I like to eat fermented cabbage, right? Which is basically kimchi. Some people don't like to eat fermented cabbage. So why is that? I could say it's because I was raised in a Korean household, which is my experience. I could say I like to eat spicy food, which is a behavior. And they're all valid reasons, right? And they could all have had an impact on my taste preferences today. In other words, it's one thing to be aware that I like to eat kimchi. It's another thing to be aware that I like to eat kimchi because I was raised in a Korean household or because I like to eat spicy food. And consequently, once you become more aware of why you think the way you do, I feel like this is a tremendous support, or it helps you greatly in getting to know why people think the way they do. It makes you consider what factors in their lives may have shaped who they are today. So whenever you're faced with an opinion that is different from your own, always reflect back on what factors may have influenced me to hold this opinion today. And that process of checking yourself, I guess, in the end, it's like double checking whether your thoughts and feelings and behaviors are justifiable, right? Is there a bias present? Is there not? And if there is, are you okay with that, or do you need to change the way you think? And going through all these mental processes, it builds character, right? It really defines your self-identity or your self-image in your own mind. And once you get into the practice of solidifying your self-image and getting to know why you think the way you do, you begin taking into consideration why other people think the way they do. When someone else has an opinion that strictly goes against your own, you don't think instantly like that person is just evil, like that person is the opposite of me. They're the opposite of right. They are wrong. You don't think that. You begin to think of, okay, this person has an opinion that is different from me, but why may that be? You know, what experiences have they had that may have led them to think this way? It's kind of like writing an English paper in college, right? Because you have to think about the background of the author, not just the text itself, but in the time period that the book was written, on maybe who their character was based off. You know, there's a lot of factors that may have gotten into it. And as a result, I guess not only do you get to be someone with a greater level of empathy, but I think the most important part, the most significant part for me is that I kind of stated it before, but you get a better idea of who you are. Once you're successful at obtaining a self-image of yourself by taking into consideration of all the factors in your life that may have led to you creating this image, you begin automatically forming opinions about your current image. And that in turn will lead you to making improvements about who you are. Because you will find flaws, right? Because what it tends to be is that we, at least me, I find that I'm more willing to accept my flaws than I'm willing to accept other people's flaws. But once I'm able to identify my flaws and take into consideration the experiences that may have led to me developing this flaw, now it seems problematic. And now I can work towards changing it. Yeah, I don't know if I did a very good job of explaining that. It's very hard to explain it without bringing in actual personal thoughts that I had, right? But those are personal thoughts, so hopefully that can be forgiven. In short, I guess in short, just take a look at yourself. But take a step back first, and then take a look at yourself. And do that, and really take into consideration the life you've lived so far. Don't just take yourself for granted, you know? Don't just believe that your personality is this way because it is this way. I guess think about what type of changes you may have been subjected to and where those changes may have come from. And I think a really good starting place of doing that is to talk to your parents about how they raised you. It's actually one of my favorite conversations to have with my parents, because you realize that your parents know more about you. Well, your parents knew more about you before you knew about yourself. And that's really interesting. You know, because your parents, because your parents put in thought about how they want to raise you, right? They have an idea of the type of person they want you to be, and that's why they raise you a certain way. And I find it, well, for me at least, I find that the way my parents raised me had a lot of influence on the type of person I turned out to be today, especially in personality, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, point of the video is, I guess, practice empathizing with yourself. You have all the data, you just gotta make the connections, right? You have all your thoughts, you have all your opinions, you have all your feelings and experiences, and you have your current state today. You know, connect the dots, see what happens. You know, you might find something interesting, you might not. Another thing that might help is if you pretend to write a book about your own life. And I've tried doing this, and what I found is that the way you organize the chapters of this book happens to align with the phases of your life where you may have experienced change. And in between thinking about those chapters and the content within them, you might find something. And if you find something or you don't, it'll be interesting just to take a trip down memory lane, right? Reflect back on the life you've lived, and then reflect on who you are today and where you are today. So yeah, as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, comment, whatever you were thinking. I would like to talk about things I talk about in my video with you. That's kind of one of the reasons why I make them. And I will see you next time. Gucci bang, Gucci, Gucci bang, Gucci, Gucci bang, Gucci. 너는 날 가지 Gucci, Gucci bang, Gucci.